I called the cops on a teenager who tracked down my house and was demanding I let him in. So I run this online math tutoring service from home to make extra money. Nothing fancy, just helping high school kids with algebra and geometry over video calls. Most of my students are pretty normal, but this one kid, Jake, had been getting more and more intense over the past few weeks. At first, everything was fine. Jake was a junior struggling with pre-calc, and his mom had signed him up for twice weekly sessions. The kid was actually pretty smart, just needed someone to explain things differently than his teacher did. But then Jake started messaging me outside of our scheduled sessions. At first, it was just quick questions about homework, which was normal. Then he started texting me about his personal problems. His parents were getting divorced, he was stressed about college applications, typical teenage stuff. I tried to keep things professional, but Jake seemed to think we were friends or something. He'd send me memes, ask what I was doing on weekends, and even invited me to his school's basketball games. I kept redirecting him back to math, but he wasn't getting the hint. Last Tuesday, Jake had a complete meltdown during our session. He'd failed a big test and was crying about how his dad was going to be furious. I tried to calm him down and offered to schedule extra review sessions before his next exam. That's when he said something that made my stomach drop. He goes, "You're the only person who actually cares about me. You're like the mom I wish I had." I immediately ended the session and sent his actual mom an email explaining that I thought Jake might benefit from talking to a school counselor. His mom replied the next day saying she'd handle it and that Jake wouldn't be needing any more tutoring sessions. I thought that was the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. Saturday afternoon, I'm in my kitchen making lunch when there's this aggressive pounding on my front door. I look through the peephole and see this tall kid I don't recognize, but something about him seemed familiar. He starts yelling, "I know you're in there. You can't just abandon me like everyone else does." That's when I realized it was Jake. Somehow, this teenager had tracked down my actual address and was having a breakdown on my front porch. I called out through the door asking him to leave, but he just got louder. He was screaming about how I was the only person who understood him and how I couldn't just cut him off. He said his parents were getting divorced because of him and that I was supposed to help him figure everything out. My neighbors started coming outside to see what was happening. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door asked if everything was okay, and Jake started yelling at her too, saying adults were all liars and that I was the only honest person he knew. I tried calling his mom, but it went straight to voicemail. Jake was getting more agitated by the minute, banging on my door and windows, demanding I let him in so we could talk. He said he wasn't leaving until I explained why I was abandoning him. That's when I called 911. I told them I had a teenager at my house who I'd been tutoring online, and he'd somehow found my address and was refusing to leave. The dispatcher said they'd send someone right away. Jake must have heard me on the phone because he started crying and apologizing, saying he just needed someone to talk to. He sat down on my porch steps and put his head in his hands. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later. They were actually really gentle with Jake, asking him what was going on and if he needed help getting home. Turns out his parents had been fighting all morning about the divorce, and Jake had walked out of the house. He'd somehow remembered seeing my street name in the background of one of our video calls and had spent hours walking around the neighborhood looking for my house. The poor kid was just having a mental breakdown and latched onto me because I was nice to him during our tutoring sessions. The officers called Jake's parents, who came to pick him up immediately. His mom was horrified and apologetic, explaining that Jake had been struggling with their divorce and had been seeing a therapist. Before Jake left, he apologized and said he didn't mean to scare me. He just didn't know who else to turn to. I told him I understood he was going through a tough time, but that showing up at people's houses wasn't okay. His mom thanked me for calling the police instead of just being angry. She said Jake needed professional help, not a math tutor trying to be his therapist. I felt bad for the kid, but I was also relieved when they drove away. I immediately changed my online tutoring policy to never show any part of my house during video calls, and I added a clause about boundaries in my parent contracts. Jake's doing better now, according to his mom, who sent me an update a few weeks later. He's working with a real counselor and his parents are handling the divorce better. But I definitely learned my lesson about keeping professional boundaries with teenage students.